Ladies, just ladies. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another glorious edition of Ask That. My name is Clark Sell, and we're going to have a fruitful conversation today with Aly Fluckey. Aly, how are you? I caught you right in the drink.
I was getting ready. I'm ready.
I know.
I'm ready to go. I'm so excited.
This.
Yeah, let's do this.
So we're gonna have just kind of a origin story, see where it leads. But before we get there, where did Aly come from? Who is Aly?
I'm still trying to figure that out. You know, that's like my main mission in life is
Cool.
to figure that out. I can tell you who I am today and how I got to be here. So yeah, no, I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa, and didn't see the ocean until I was 20. Experienced a lot of corn, a lot of cows.
I don't know that I saw the ocean until I was 22, maybe somewhere around there. Yeah.
Kindred spirits.
Yes,
you know how it is.
Yeah. And then I swore I saw a shark.
Oh yeah, of course. You know,
running out of the water like tail between my legs.
Or jellyfish. You know, anything like seaweed, just like brushing up against the leg. It's like no jellyfish. Oh my god.
Right.
Grew up in Des Moines, Iowa. I was an arty kid. I did a lot of like drawing and painting and stuff like that. And I did a little bit on I grew up in the time where our family's first computer was the Gateway. And I was like firmly in that transition of not having it at the beginning, but then at the end of my high school career, like all of our papers had to be typed and all of that. And we had to like cite resources and use the internet for everything. So I was like right in that time of the transition from everything being analog to digital. And it was kind of cool. I never really felt super connected to computers though. Like it was one of those that I felt like it was a tool. I was never like in there trying to break things apart and really trying to understand like the inner workings of it as a kid. I did write, my first HTML CSS for my customizing my live blog when I was about 14. So that was my first foray into.
Is that still around somewhere? Is that still?
No, that'd be way too embarrassing.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine the skeletons that are down in there. So I'm very pleased that is gone.
Well, I ask, in part because I think of my kids who are growing up and, they only know a world where everything is connected and those who make, I was privileged to make mistakes and then they just got erased, if you will. And today I don't know that
it's not quite the same.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of psychiatric pressure on kids to not be able to make mistakes. And I think that's a little bit unfair because I don't think at the age of 10, well, I don't really think at the age of 10 you should be on Snapchat or Facebook or all those things anyways. But let's say you are, I think your preteens are, if you can't make mistakes and learn from them, it's kind of hard to kind of
absolutely
haunt you down the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's that sense of permanence, right? That I was actually just talking about this with a friend I can't imagine having like my Instagram go back to when I was a teen or tween. Totally. And it's embarrassing enough that it goes back to like 2011 and my early 20s when I was being young and dumb but I just can't fathom having every single photo that I've ever taken from my entire life, like all right there. So it's a very interesting, like change from when it first started and how, we were told like, oh, everybody, like nothing is deleted on the internet. And so we were pretty cautious of it. And then now I feel like there's a little less caution, but like way more accessibility into finding that old stuff.
Right.
And nothing really gets deleted in the same way. Like it's true that nothing really gets deleted.
Right.
It's just weird.
It is weird. And you and I, we kind of started before this whole thing happened about our origin stories. And, I was very much the same way. My dad was actually super into computers. And I think because of that, I wasn't. I was into being a mechanic and getting my hands dirty and building stuff. And I just didn't really care. I mean, it just
Yeah.
wasn't my thing. And I think even to today, I could do a lot of things and be perfectly happy in life. Like it's not my only thing.
Yeah.
I'm certainly passionate for it, and I love the internet, and I love that computers could do stupid stuff for humans.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We're in this changing world. The between Instagram and Facebook and the iPhone, and I mean, the last 10 years have been crazy.
Yeah. 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 Crazy. I, I very much feel the same way. It's always been kind of a means to an end, if you will. Like it was never like the thing that I was most
Mm-hmm.
passionate about. It was interesting and it was cool. And I, I, I actually wanted to go into graphic design when I was leaving high school. And so I knew that I was going to have to use computers for that job, but I never really wanted to understand like how computers worked, how they do
Right.
their thing. Yeah, it was more just like I need to figure out Adobe Photoshop and things like that.
So was that draw because of the art, the draw to
Yeah,
art?
yeah. I I had a lot of subjects in school that I like was good at, but nothing that I felt that I was like actually passionate about to actually go
Oh,
into. You know how that
I,
goes.
I mean, I just hated school. Like I did
Yeah,
whatever I
yeah.
could to get through it. I didn't, whatever. Like I just want to be done.
Yeah, I wanted to be out.
Yeah.
I wanted to have my own life.
Yep.
That was the
Yep.
goal.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
and yeah, and like I think I couldn't really see myself being a traditional artist, if you will, like going there's still the stigma around like the starving artist, like persona, and uh, especially 10, 12 years ago, that was like really prevalent, and I didn't, I wanted more.
Oh yeah.
So I felt like graphic design was at least a way to still scratch that itch, like creatively,
Sure.
but in a medium that was more accessible than,
Yeah. For all. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I was actually in school for about 2 years where when I learned that like it was a combination of a ton of things, the school I had chosen, uh, my own place in life at the time. Like I wasn't
Sure.
super passionate about anything.
Yep.
I went from like being pretty good at stuff in high school and then going to college and then you have that rude awakening of like,
Yep.
oh shit, I'm not the only like person who's good at stuff. I have to actually like compete and do work and
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for any of that. I feel like looking back, I probably could have really benefited from like a gap year in between to like
Mm,
figure some stuff out.
mm.
But it was always this expectation that I was going to go to college, so I never really thought twice. And then once I got there, I was like, I really kind of don't like this. And I was working at Nationwide Insurance doing data processing at the time to pay for school. And much to the dismay of my family, I decided to drop out and just take some time. But Nationwide has they had an education reimbursement program after you'd been there full time for so long. And so I was really interested in that, especially interested in having someone else pay their money
Yeah.
and not
Totally.
me.
Yeah.
I could just hear the dollar signs racking up the amount of, like with every day that I was at school.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like I was getting the proper level of like education that I felt like I was paying for. So that was a big thing too. So I quit school.
That's I mean I would say that's very kind of present in oneself to think that, especially at that age.
I mean, I knew people who were graduating and then like not able to get a job except for at Starbucks. And I was like,
Yeah.
this is not a cheap school.
Yeah.
This is not the level that I was, and even some of my professors were saying, hey, this, like, if you really want to do this, you'd be better suited at like another school.
Mm.
And it was, like all kinds of other stuff going on. So
So you said you started from Des Moines. I'm curious where you went to school and if we ended up like driving past one another. Where
yeah,
where where did you call school?
like college school or high school.
Yeah, college.
I went to Drake University.
Okay.
Yeah.
I actually went to Western Illinois, so much
Oh,
closer to
okay.
Des Moines.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
We would have to go to the Iowas on Sunday to get the beer and liquor because we were in a dry town on
Oh, that's
Sundays.
right.
Cruise on up to the Quad Cities,
Oh, yeah. Quad
Yeah,
cities are great.
yeah.
Um, but
Small
yeah,
world.
Small world. I mean, the Midwest. It's you've seen one state, you've seen them all. Yeah. So no, I went quit school, went full time at Nationwide, was doing the data processing stuff, and then shortly after that, I saw an advertisement on one of the screens that was in like our little area for learn how to code. And like I had said, I had done a little bit of HTML, CSS to customize my MySpace and my LiveJournal and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh, I remember liking that, like this. And they had advertised it was like learn how to code with Cobol. I knew nothing about Cobol, but I was like, it can't be that different. It'll be fine.
Yeah,
so,
go to 100.
Yeah. And my mom actually worked at Nationwide too in IT. She was also one of those, she really liked computers and stuff.
Sure.
And so I was like, this is at least a little more secure and a little more interesting than what I'm doing right now.
Sure.
Let's test it out. Let's see what's up. And so I signed up for the class, and Nationwide had this really interesting deal. Basically, Cobol stopped getting taught in schools right around like late 80s, early 90s, because they thought it was going to be made obsolete by the newer languages and new things. But large companies like Nationwide had a ton of this data that they never invested to upgrade, move over, change from their current ecosystems.
Fast forward 20 years, still do.
Exactly. And so they were in the situation where they were running out of people to actually maintain those mainframe code bases. And so they had to skill people up internally. So what they did is they actually took one of their directors over commercial processes, who was actually teaching at a community college on the side anyway, and was like, hey, why don't you just come do that just on Nationwide campus, on Nationwide systems, and we'll do all that. So basically over the course of a year, I took 2 Cobol classes, like one night a week after work, with a couple of people that were also on the same team as me and a few others from other areas of the company. And we got college credit through like the community college. So they were actually, doing it really well. Like it wasn't just it
wasn't just a hack shop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it felt really nice too, because like on one hand, I was learning the basics of programming, like logic and things like that, but then also learning Cobol, and then also learning the Nationwide systems. So it was a pretty seamless transition when after the classes were done, I applied for a job and they offered me one, but I had to move to Columbus, Ohio. So that's actually how I left Iowa, and that happened about 6 years ago now, and moved to Columbus to work on Cobol, and it...
Just go to 100.
Yep, it was, I mean, at the time, I didn't have any other frame of reference, so it was awesome. Totally. It was the best. It was the first time in my life, too, that I was, like, making my own decisions. I was doing something that was purely for me and not for anybody else. It was the first time that I had been able to, like, have some actual independence. And so I was really excited. I was digging it. I ended up spending, like, 8 months at Nationwide doing Cobol. One of the projects that I ended up being on toward the end had this really insane Cobol to C# integration. They were doing like a transformation between the two databases. And our front end was done in something called Dialog, which I believe if you even Google for it, you can't find anything, because at least in 2012, when I was trying to Google for it, I couldn't find anything. It was this very weird proprietary thing. We were building like, it was an insurance application. You go to your insurance agent and you want to like add a driver. They have to then go through this application that we were building. And so it was nuts. There's a part of me that really wishes that I could go back now with all of my experience since then and just even make sense of like this really interesting technical problem of how many different technologies we were using. We also did our testing with Ruby automation and Cucumber. So that was actually my first intro to Ruby, which of course, the moment that I started like looking into Ruby, I was like, this is way cooler than the
Yeah.
Cobol
Yeah.
stuff.
Totally. Yeah. I
And so
mean, when I had the Cobol, I had the Cobol GUI in school, right? It was like this is 90, 96, 7, 8, and their thing was, prepare you for kind of the mainframe and all that. So there was like the
yeah,
C programmers, and then all you had to learn Pascal and Cobol, and you get all this logic and whatnot. But I hated it. Like I had no context. We were just making like green bar reports all the time. I'm like, who wants to do this shit in life? Like,
yeah.
this is horrible.
Well, I
And
remember even having like Excel spreadsheets for the different uh like characters, like the
mm-hmm,
character count for where you could put out a value.
right,
And then you had to like map it out and make sure that you had space in between everything.
yeah,
And I mean that shit's crazy.
it is. I mean, I think back and go, it's no wonder. And maybe it's a little bit of why we do that conference and have these conversations and whatnot. Because
Yeah.
I think the context, without having the context at that time, I was so um, like turned off by
Hmm.
what could be done because it felt so uncreative. It felt
Yeah.
so ugly and dirty to just like do this stuff day in and
Yeah.
day out. Like I'd rather just go make roads. Like it
Yeah.
just didn't seem worthwhile to sit in the chair and make green bar reports. And but I never had any exposure to, you know, what really could have been done. Even though I came from a family of, hierarchy of nerds, it just I don't know. I just didn't
No.
get it.
Same here. It was kind of interesting too because it was, it kind of goes back to the whole, I really always thought, especially in the beginning, like coding was a job. It was just simply a way for me to
Yeah,
make money. Like
yeah,
that's it.
totally.
Um,
Yeah,
and
I
it
took the job
wasn't,
at Allstate because it was $1,000 more than the insurance company down the road that was
yeah,
closer. Like I was
exactly.
like, cool, it's $1,000 more.
Let's do
Great.
this.
Spent
Yeah.
probably 4,000 in gas to go the distance
Yeah.
further.
That's how that works.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it wasn't until I started learning Ruby and I took a couple of, girl develop it classes too
Hmm.
to just like intro to Ruby and stuff. And that's when I started kind of realigning myself into the conference goers, the ones who
Sure.
are actually like really interested in sharing their learnings and learning new things. The Cobol developers wanted to go home at 4. They,
Yeah. Yeah.
they it just wasn't the environment where, and I was young, so I was thirsty and I was looking
Yeah.
for all kinds of really cool stuff. And so it felt really natural to kind of move over to a newer ecosystem, a new language where people were actually
Totally.
really excited and
Yeah.
getting together. Like the whole idea of conferences was totally new to me and so surprising. I was like,
Hmm.
like, it's weird to me that people actually want to get together and like talk about their work.
Yep.
Not in like a, like wholly complainy way all the
Right.
time.
Right. Right.
It's like,
Actually lift one another.
yeah, exactly. We want to make each other better, not just for our own self-serving needs, and that we actually believe in things like community
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So I really latched on to that, and I felt like it was much more in line with what I was looking for at the time too. Um, and so I actually ended up getting my a Ruby apprenticeship
Okay.
through a small consultancy there in Columbus by going to a GitHub
Yeah.
drink up when
Sure.
they used to do that. And started talking with some people who worked at that consultancy. They talked about their apprenticeship program, and that decision was actually even harder than the one to leave Iowa and move to Columbus for the Cobol job,
Interesting.
because I had already done the
Yep.
move, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like,
Safety.
safety.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
knew exactly what my path was going to be at
Sure.
Nationwide. It was
Sure.
very clear. It was pretty secure. I was leaving, a like not super high paying job, but higher than I'd ever been paid
Yeah.
job,
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
to go back to like $10 an hour. And there's no guarantee that the apprenticeship is going to work out and they're going to hire me.
Yep.
But I still was like, I got to do it. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it was what I was like really looking for. And luckily it ended up working out. I did apprenticeship for 6 months. They hired me on as a junior Rails dev. And then over the course of the next year and a half, through working in Rails, it became very clear that everything that I really, really loved was everything in the browser. And
Sure,
so
totally.
that's when
Take you
which feels
back
like a, yes,
right,
exactly.
take you back to the art side of things, and now
Yep.
you're exercising the other side of your mind.
Yep. Feels like a very long and roundabout way to get to the
Sure,
place that I was actually trying to
sure.
get. And the medium is different.
Yeah,
So even though I don't do a lot of visual design now, through with Photoshop or Sketch or anything like that, I actually really, and I didn't know this about myself then, I really love the code and I love the implementation and I love collaborating with designers to execute on their vision and actually help
sure.
them bring it to life,
Yep.
and things like that. So
Yeah, yeah.
it
Yeah,
was,
I'm very much the same. I mean, I've always gravitated towards the art side of things and the design and the brand and how how these things evoke emotion.
yeah,
How do you? I hate nothing more than like being in a sprint call and somebody going, "Well, we're going to do it this way because that's the way it's been done," and it's like
yeah,
that way sucks.
yeah,
Why are we spending all of our time doing this to just create it even? It's just more difficult rather. I
yeah,
mean, like why mess around? Especially when we have these tools, right? These tools are to make us be more productive or to
yep,
remove barriers. So
yep.
to not be creative in that process seems disingenuous to what you're doing in the first place.
Completely agree.
Yeah. I I'm going to take it back when you said about getting involved in the community. I had this thought the other day that our industry, unlike others, if we didn't have a community, I really wonder what it would be like. Because I don't
That's a great
think,
question.
yeah, I just don't think it would exist kind of in the same, like, take away the open source, take away the conferences, take away the meetups, take away the free time, and and then let's draw the kind of corollary to some of the trades. Add a union. Um,
Mm,
are you? And so now you're very rigid on like what you learn and can do, and does innovation happen?
yeah,
Does like how different would it be? Would it be like going to a grocery store and saying, "Well, I just need a banana. Like I don't really, the banana came from where?" It's just pick the thing off the shelf, and I don't know. Like it's a really I got really nervous inside when
yeah,
it just I don't think we always give it the right amount of justice to what it can do for folks, but more importantly, what it's done for the industry
yeah,
at the small level, right? Like your career has been altered because of that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. If like I do think about it a lot of like if I would have stayed home that one night instead of going to the GitHub thing, like
Yep.
what would my life look like right
Sure.
now?
Sure.
And the answer is not anything like it does today.
Sure.
I know
Sure.
that. But I think you're right. I think that as much as there are times that I complain about like the the speed of almost
Yeah.
like the speed of innovation and
Yeah.
just how there's a such an emphasis on keeping up with your craft and
Yeah.
the fact that like there's so many debates happening currently just around like
It's
do
a
you
nice
need
way to
to
put it.
yeah I'm trying to be diplomatic.
Yeah.
Do you need to go to conferences? Do you need to
Yeah.
contribute to open source? Do you
Yeah.
need to like to be a developer? Do you need to do these things? And I I always want to be like, no, if you're writing code for your job, then you're a developer, and like that's it. And like I think that that is true and that's right. But I think the question around innovation does still stand. Of like, if we didn't have a mechanism for us to get together
Yeah.
and push each other and lift each other up and share our knowledge, then I don't know if we would be innovating nearly as
Yeah.
much. I feel like I remember back to like that Cobol line of
Yeah.
business application, like the insurance app, and it was not good software.
Right. And it
But
was only ever going to be what Cobol let it be, right? Like
yep,
it was never going to be any more than that. And
yep,
and that's for me like imagine a world without GitHub or Bitbucket or NPM or, Stack Overflow or,
Yeah.
blogs and YouTubes and wow, like we're going back to a manual that was written by a manufacturer that says this is how you use it, and you end up with the Cobol shit.
Yeah. I think too, it also allows developers at a developer level to have a lot more agency. Where I remember back to,
That's a good way to put it.
Working on the Cobol team, and those technical decisions were not made by us. They were not made by the developers actually working on the project. We wanted to use different tools. We were interested in different languages, but there was that, the people in charge who made those decisions, and then they were given to us. And so it's a lot and I think it allows us to make decisions with the information that we have and to make better ones, rather than always relying on like someone else who may not have as much information or experience with the problem that they're trying to solve.
Sure.
And making decisions that are not the best for the product. I feel it allows us to be a little closer to the actual innovation.
You mentioned, and I totally agree, like the train of which we're on is just, I don't know, crazy at times. I mean, it feels like every day something changes.
Yeah, the rug being pulled out from underneath you, and you're just like trying to like get your footing again.
Are you, in a day of, imposter syndrome and blah, 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 I'm not downplaying it, but like, are you comfortable with always being, and let me rephrase that. I liken myself as a practitioner, somebody who has given up on even using the word senior or experience and whatnot. I feel like a rookie I have recognized the fact that no matter what I throw down, there is something to be learned from somebody else that I could do that better. And I have just relegated myself to being a practitioner, being a rookie, and realizing that tomorrow I hopefully will be in a step better.
Yeah.
That's come through a lot of panic attacks and self-reflection. I mean, do you feel like the constant rookie?
Oh, I mean, so actually I have, just recently, so for the last, I've been with my company for about 2.5 years. And for the bulk of that time, I've been working primarily doing, a lot of HTML, CSS, styling. So like specific front end stuff, not a ton of JavaScript too. So like a little bit of like.
You're deep in the weeds on CSS. We're flinging transitions and make it dance.
It's my favorite. It's my favorite language. But just this last 6 months, I started learning React. And, it was one of those too where I feel like I went into JavaScript land, like really kicking and screaming. Because I believe that HTML, CSS is one of those things that is so important to our applications, but doesn't get nearly as much love, or attention. And
we do a lot of things with JavaScript that we could just do in CSS.
Absolutely.
And we copy a lot of CSS because we don't know what the flying hell it's doing.
Yep. But I'm also a realist and understand that I'm much more marketable if I do know JavaScript as well. And the company I'm working with right now had done a lot of work to standardize around React Native. They had done a lot of experiments with the different JavaScript frameworks, and that's another really good example of like why I didn't want to learn them was because they were changing so quickly, and I don't know which one's going to be obsolete next week. And I was like, it's not what I want to be doing to spend my time. I can spend time, diving into Flexbox and Grid and all this other stuff that really helps me do the things that I like to do really well. But the React Native stuff started coming up, and this last project I've been on is an actual mobile project with React Native. So it's not the first ecosystem shift I've had, from Cobol to Ruby and then from Ruby to front end. But it was the longest period of time between the ecosystem shifts. And so it took me I mean, I feel like an embarrassing amount of time to let go of the fact that I had gotten really, really used to working in the areas that I knew I could work in, HTML, CSS, like Rails apps,
Yeah.
and make a lot of progress and like come into a project and immediately get going.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel really
Feel
confident in,
productive.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Feel confident in my estimates. I'm able to look at a card and know exactly what I need to do. Whereas get over to mobile and I'm looking at my stories and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't even know where to
Yep.
begin.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know nothing. I don't even know the difference between the how to run via the simulator versus how to run on an app, and what is Xcode doing with their provisioning and code signing. It's so confusing. So
Yeah.
it really took a minute, and that was one of those that times where I had actually kind of forgotten what the imposter syndrome felt like. But it was a clear indicator to me that I had stayed in an area where I was comfortable for a little too long. And now that I'm on the other side of it and have been working in React Native for a couple months and feel much more confident in my ability to actually be productive and not be constantly tapping people on the shoulder to be like, hey, what's this doing? It feels nice to go back to that place and know that I'm not ever going to know everything.
Yeah.
And that like I enjoy surrounding myself with people who are also very much in the same vein of, yeah, we know some stuff. Some people know more things about certain things than
Yeah.
others, but none of us know everything. And that's a big piece that's important to me in like the places that I work with, is that kind of mentality around like we might be experts, but we do not know everything. And we'll be the first to admit the pieces that we don't know. And that always feels really good.
Do you think the community is subconsciously weeding out some of that bullshit bravado that has stood for years?
Oh, that's a very diplomatic way to say it. Yes, I do. There's, it's hard for me to not have empathy for people who have been in the industry for a really long time, learned a certain way to do something, and then now the culture is shifting out from underneath them and they're told that they're doing everything wrong. It's hard for me to not have empathy for that. On the other hand, I also understand what it's like to be an underrepresented person in the community and to really have to fight for my voice to be heard and for my ideas to be listened to and taken into account. It's taken a long time to get to that place where I feel like I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by people who naturally just respect people.
Sure.
But I know that that's not the case everywhere.
So, okay, so
No, go ahead.
So do you feel like that's because I think it's an important topic. Do you feel like that's as a result of like do you really feel like it was luck or was it the you surrounding yourself your choice in who you surrounded yourself with?
I do think it had a lot to do with choice. I think it
Okay.
had a lot to do with knowing, because like I felt the way, like I understood the way that I felt being at Nationwide, and I understood the way that I felt when I took the interview to go do the Ruby apprenticeship, and it was just in simply the way that like people approached me, people talked to me. I I felt much more, I just felt much more myself. Like
Sure.
when I was working at Nationwide, you know, one, they have a dress code and I can't do this to
It's
my hair,
it's an insurance company.
you know,
And every time you say Nationwide, I want to sing the jingle for
I
whatever
know.
reason. So good on them because it's
the marketing, they
it's
did it.
it's there. I've never wanted to say it more in this amount of time than I do the last 30 minutes.
That's hilarious. Uh, but yeah, it was really a matter of like where I could be myself. And through that also came, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't know how much
Sure.
of it was luck, but I do think that a lot of it had to do with simply my own high expectations for who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do with my life. And when when I see somebody doing something that I want to do, then I go talk to them, and I want to know more about
Yep.
them.
Yep.
Um, and I try and I try and do the things that scare me too. So if I come up against something that's like that gives me that uneasy feeling of like, well, that would really be a challenge, and I don't, I try not to shy away from those times because I personally have experienced the most growth
Yep.
when I face those challenges rather than shying
Yep.
away from them.
Yep. Oh,
I
I
think it's
totally agree.
really, I think it's really easy to live a life based on fear.
Hmm.
But I personally found that it wasn't a way for me to get what I wanted. So,
Yeah, and I think you could take that fear. I mean, it's kind of twofold, right? I mean, there's one of just being vulnerable and putting yourself in a position to where, uh, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know, and you're just scared. I mean, I right now I'm
yeah,
living in a daily scared kind of moment, and then there's just like fear that is the kind of primitive
yeah,
fear of like I can't actually excel and
yeah. It's the lizard brain trying to keep you
yeah, yeah,
exactly
yeah,
the way
yeah.
you are, like
The
right now.
reptilian, yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
exactly.
Um, you started this with "I could tell you who I am today," which I thought
Oh,
was a
yeah.
very very kind of present moment of here's what's got me to here. Like we're putting yourself out there and being vulnerable and scared and in a community and whatnot. Do you have any foreshadowing of what you may be tomorrow or
Mm.
the longer tomorrow? And I asked that. I'll give you a moment and I'll tell my story. There was a time where I had left safe corporate America where I made a lot of money and I had a family and this and that. And when we left, my wife and I just kind of said, look, you really need to go be who you are, right?
Hmm.
You've played the corporate thing, you did it well and whatever, but it's not really you. And so go do you and figure out who you are and don't get so hung up on where tomorrow will be because you've kind of done this pragmatic of like I can take this step and I can go do that and I can climb there, but that doesn't necessarily achieve happiness and
Yeah.
rewarding and present with family and all that kind of stuff. So I'm curious, knowing all the stuff that we've talked about, do you know or do you have an idea where you'd want to be
Yeah.
in a 2 year? I'm not even gonna say a 10 year thing because I think that's whatever. There'll
Yeah.
be
10 years is way too long.
yeah, I mean we'll have multiple iPhones attached to our ears, but
Exactly.
yeah,
Uh, it's a great question. It also changes from
yeah,
moment to moment.
sure. Which is, and you said it like you said. I could tell you who I am
Yep.
today, and I
Yep.
I, I really appreciated that.
I feel like right now my big focuses are trying to trying to really make the life that I want to live. I've had uh, I've had some stuff to deal with in the past, uh, and it was one of those. I've been really working on it over this last year, and I'm in a phase right now where I'm really letting go of a lot of things, like a
Sure,
lot of the past expectations of who I was going to be and what my life was going to look like, and really realizing that a lot of those past expectations were not mine.
sure,
They were for other people. They were because I was trying to make a lot of other people happy rather than really trying to figure out like what it is that I want to do to make me happy.
sure.
Um, and so I see myself continuing a lot of that over the next few years. Um, I,
I'd almost argue that that's something that you should do regardless,
yes, I
right?
agree.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I don't know that we really necessarily pay enough cadence to our own mental being. I mean, every parent tries to raise their kids in a certain way with certain beliefs and whatnots, but in
Yeah.
you can't be unbiased, right? And
Yeah.
thus those things bleed through, and then you're surrounded by whatever culture and community that you're around, and but then again, like you have to figure out who the hell you are,
Yeah,
right? And what
exactly.
you want to do, and sometimes that means moving states,
Yep.
companies, friends, family,
Yep.
like,
Yep. It's not easy. It's a challenge. And like,
right.
I think it also kind of goes back to that fear of I feel like I lived a lot of my life with fear up to this point. Like I talk about, how I was like all like into these challenges and stuff, and I had really kind of compartmentalized it too, where I
Sure,
was
of course. Yeah,
into the challenging things in the space that I was into being challenged. Work was one of them.
sure,
But like challenging myself around my relationships to my family or my relationships to the people that are close to me,
sure.
I was really scared about that stuff. And so I, had really kind of kicked the can down the road on that one for as long as I possibly could. And then I'm now in that place of like, no, my relationships are actually a lot better when I do them intentionally.
Sure.
When I'm not just simply acting out of fear and expectations and people pleasing and things like
Yep.
that. When
Sure.
I'm just more honest and real with myself about who I who I am, what I bring to the table, and what I want out of this whole deal.
Yeah.
You've only got so much time too, so I'm also I hate wasting time. That's one like if I'm not
So you're
getting
not, so you're
something
not,
out of it,
all right, so you're not very patient then.
I'm not very patient. Yeah, I'm working on it, but
So then, the longer term, the longer thing in life, like requires one to be patient and
yeah,
self-reflect and refine one's craft. And,
yeah,
um, that's a hard
yeah.
pill to swallow.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like there's been a major shift too in looking for purpose in work,
Sure.
and not finding it. So now I'm content like where I'm at right now, and I don't feel a need to like build a whole new product myself and become an entrepreneur or work for Apple or Google or whoever is the
Yep.
new hotness. I don't need to work for the best companies. Like, I just need to be fulfilled in the work that I'm doing like right now. I need to be interested in the problems that I'm solving.
Yep.
And I want to be doing it with people who I respect and enjoy being around.
Yep.
That's a big one for me. And then I want to I want to challenge myself on other things that I took so long to not focus on. Like I want to learn how to cook really good food and eat well and not like always have a craving of ordering pizza constantly.
Well, you
And
are in
things like that.
Chicago. I mean,
I mean, there is an excuse, right?
when in Rome, do what the Romans do.
Yeah. But no, so like, yeah, when I look to like the next 2 years, it's a lot more of, not living in the extremes, right? Like it's more
Yeah.
about like living in the middle and, cause like most of my life has been at the extremes, either really high highs or really low lows.
Yep.
And, that's been great, but also super exhausting.
Yep.
And
And
there's
you
a
burn
part of
out.
me, yeah, and I'm burnt out a little
Yep.
bit.
Yep.
So I kind
Yep.
of want to
I get it.
practice like, what is it like to do things with a little more like,
Be on a marathon.
yeah, what's the
Run the marathon.
marathon look
Yep.
like instead
I
of
understand.
the
It's in a
sprint?
100-meter dash. Yep.
Yeah,
I get
yeah,
it. I totally get
I'm
it.
excited.
So then, what's holding you back from cooking? As somebody who loves to cook, like you say you want to do it, so then what the hell? Like, why not? Why? What's stopping you today?
We've, and I say we, that's my boyfriend. We have, we're doing a lot better, I will say. The first apartment we lived here in Chicago, was like really not convenient access to a grocery store, and the kitchen sucked. So we just got into this really
Fair
horrible
enough.
habit
Fair
of
enough.
going out and
Sure.
ordering in. This last apartment that we moved into, there's a grocery store a block away. And so we are doing a lot better about just simply, so Sundays are our day of like in the morning, we're like, what are the meals that you want to have this week? And then we've actually been making homemade pizza on Sunday evenings.
Amen. Are you making
And
the dough?
yes,
All right. Amen.
dough, sauce, those are the big things from
Yep.
scratch. And then we have a pizza stone.
There you
And
go.
it's pretty damn good. It like
Yeah.
rivals some of the other like
Yeah. Yeah.
pizza places that we order from. So, the little wins, right?
Hmm.
It's creating a habit. It's sustainable change. It's not the I'm going to
Yep.
revamp my whole diet and eat like weird foods for 30 days and then go back to normal. I'm thinking about like how to make like small sustainable change and build up new practices and habits that are going to be like lead up to lifestyle changes,
Yep.
rather than thinking about it in terms of like how can I
Quick wins.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Get
No,
it.
I get it. Like it's taken a long time to come back to that's all kind of interrelated, right? Like what you do in your day job and how you do it and where do you find passion from. It's taken me a long time to realize like, and if instead of doing what I was good at or I could be good at, doing things that I was truly passionate about.
Yeah.
And it's taking me a long time to get to achieve the go do what you're passionate about. And some of it has just been like saying, okay, well, let's just, I mean, we're here today because I decided to say, okay, well, this is true purpose. You know,
Yeah.
I need to be doing this and
Yeah.
not doing, balancing the other things, and we'll just kind of figure out where that takes us. And
Yeah.
making time to forgive oneself and go cook and be present in
Yeah.
those things and hang up the whatever, because you know what, rack will be there tomorrow and
Exactly.
whatever will be there tomorrow. Like,
The jobs will, the code, the
yep,
technical problems, they will all be there tomorrow, but
yep,
we don't get infinite amounts of time with our loved ones and
no,
having the experiences that we want to have. And so I think that that's, uh, way more important to me than the code that I write. The
yeah,
code that I write allows me to live the life, that I want to live. And
yeah,
that's it, why it's important to me. But
yeah.
it is by far not the most important thing.
That's right. And does not define one, right?
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
tomorrow you will learn something else that will change what you wrote yesterday. And
Yep.
all the context that's been around decisions. I mean, I often tell people, yeah, we shipped. Totally, we shipped. Yeah, we cut corners. Like, do you want to know why that corner got cut? Well,
Yeah.
it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and the shit had to go out the door by
Hmm.
7. And yeah, all that goes to the wind when
Yep.
things need to happen. And
Yep.
um, it's a it's an
Yeah.
interesting world. I appreciate you sharing because I think it's something that we don't necessarily talk about enough, and we need to stop painting falsettos
Yeah.
around who we are and what our Instagram and Facebook profiles look like, and start really kind of sharing the real stuff. So
Yeah. I feel like I make better products too when I understand the humans that I'm working with.
yep,
When we're just focused on the code and the technical pieces, then I feel
yeah,
like
we've lost all sight.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm interested in the humans. You know,
Yeah.
we can always solve technical problems. The humans are the more interesting and the more challenging piece, and require a lot more love.
I read something. I was on Medium somewhere. God, it was the last couple of months. It was like nobody asked to use your software. Like in the majority of cases, like they were handed this thing that they were told
Yeah,
to use as part of their job, and like they're just like, great, another file menu or a thing that moves a widget because you didn't really try to understand your customer and their need
yeah,
and the thing that they were doing. And I've always been drawn to the mobile side because I always felt like those who actually paid attention to one's customer yielded a better result. Because you were forced to, not only were you constrained by size, but you were constrained by attention. And so
yep,
if you think of Alexa and the voice things, and you think of the phone and IoT, those constraints make you focus on that human side. Whereas you can look at the website of the world today and it could just be a dumpster fire of I don't give a
yeah,
shit, instead of like, well, no, let's make something that actually works really well.
yeah.
So I could
I
go down
agree.
that rabbit
I know,
hole for
right?
a
We
long
could have a
time.
whole other.
Yeah. All right. So at the end of every one of these, I take a moment to acknowledge the other person. And with that being said, I want to acknowledge you, not just for being here today, but for you being a strong voice in the community and being out and talking. Um, we need strong women. We need to have these conversations. And with that, thank you for sharing today with everybody, with me. The conversation's been I just much appreciated.
Yeah, no,
So
thank
thank
you.
you.
I really
Um,
appreciate it. This was awesome.
so my last question for you then is, what could can you define community, and what does it mean to you?
Wow. The first word that popped into my head was opportunity. Um,
How so?
Mostly because I think I just think about how many people I've known through my time, and I have a pretty short tenure here in software. It, not nearly as long as many others, but I think about the the fact that like community is one of those things that actually made software more accessible to many other people. I think that when we were relying only on people with CS degrees and those were the only ones who could write software, then that really limits the amount of people who can have access to it. Whereas, you know, I see advertisements for meetups all the time now. And it's just like, no matter what you're interested in, there's a meetup. And I'm lucky enough to live in Chicago where there's literally everything you could ever want. There's a meetup for it. But I think it's so wonderful every time that I go to one of those meetups and I meet somebody new who doesn't have, like, who may not be in the community yet, but like they are interested in Raspberry Pis and they find this meetup and they go to the meetup around Raspberry Pi and then they find other people. And then I think about how many jobs and how many friends I've known who have gotten jobs or connections to jobs through the people that they've met through the community. The last 3 jobs I've had, I got through people in the community. I did 4 jobs I've had. The only job I applied for and got was the Cobol job. Every other job I've had in software has been through a person that I knew. And that was facilitated by the community. So I think that's why opportunity came to my mind when you asked me that.
I love it. It's been interesting asking this question of everybody every day.
Yeah, I bet.
I don't know. I love it.
That's awesome. Thanks, Clark.
All right. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is another glorious, and do I mean glorious, edition of Ask That. Give us a thumbs up, like us, share us, tell the world about us. Aly, where do people find you?
Oh, I'm What the Fluckey on the internet, WT Fluckey.
I love that.
You can find me all over. Yeah, that's probably the best way.
All right, we want to hear people's origin stories. Drop a comment below. Let us know, what was your foray into where you are today, and do you feel present with where you'll be tomorrow? I think that'd be interesting to see. Aly, thanks for the time today. I am looking forward to crossing paths here soon.
Yeah, definitely.
And let's stay in touch.
Sounds good. Thanks, Clark.